What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera. 1 hour in. We had a recent college grad that would use his corporate card for personal purchases. He figured that the company would just keep deducting from his payroll until it was paid off. He was fired after 3 months of constant reminders to stop doing it. I don't think it qualifies as the fastest, because he lasted 3 months, but it was so idiotic. A week. I worked in a bar and a new girl started. At work, she seemed a little rough but was fine. One day she finished a shift, sat at the bar and ordered a red wine with lemonade and ice in it, not really relevant to the story, just shows she is clearly insane. Her boyfriend came in, they had a huge domestic in front of my manager and several customers, and she threw her drink over her BF and dramatically stormed out. New bar drink. Wine plus lemonade equals a domestic. Don't forget it's on the rocks, just like the relationship. This is the opposite route here, but I found it amusing. My boss was out of town and I managed a tea shop near a Starbucks years ago. This kid came in, foreign, and said he was supposed to start today. We were hiring and I trained him, etc. My boss came back 2 days later and had no idea. The kid was in the wrong place, but he stayed with us. Hired on the spot without even applying. First day of work, he walks in, says "What the fuck is up, dumbass?" to the guy that parked next to, didn't touch, his new Camaro he bought since he got hired. The guy was the CEO of the company I used to work for, on visit to our branch. Literally 10 minutes into his shift he was signing release papers. I work construction. We had 2 new hires that were friends starting the same day. Boss told one take a coffee order and come back. Took everyone's money and said he needed his friend to go with him cause it was a big order. They never came back. Guy got hired, while going through orientation realized that his ex-GF worked there too, turned around and walked right out the front door. This was a while ago at my old job. New guy gets hired as a busboy. He was super annoying and tried to insert himself into everyone's conversation whether they wanted him there or not. It only took a couple of hours for the whole restaurant to hate him. I was working the bar and he kept eating the bar fruit. I personally didn't care, but the manager did. Manager comes over and tells him to stop eating the fruit. He looks the manager in the eye and eats another piece of fruit. Manager says "Really?" Followed by "Come with me to the office." New guy promptly replies with "All right man, calm down. I can tell you got that big dick energy for a good reason," followed with cliché wink and nudge from his elbow. In front of me and like 4 other employees. I wanted to slam my face into the ice bin, it was so cringy to witness. He promptly walked out the front door 10 minutes later without his uniform on anymore. The worst thing about it was the manager was an insanely laid-back guy. Hell, the whole restaurant was insanely laid back. You really had to try hard to get fired from this place. Had he not thrown in that big dick line, I'm almost positive he would have just gotten a slap on the wrist and kept the job. I got hired as a long-term temp with one other person to do some basic data entry work at a major brand pretty much everyone has heard of. And it was at their corporate headquarters, so pretty prestigious. Anyway, we went through all of this onboarding stuff in the morning that required us to get photo IDs and figure out parking and all that stuff. Then after 2 or 3 hours we were introduced to one of the employees in our new department who began going over what we were going to be doing. None of it seemed overly difficult and I figured that while it was new system I had never used before I'd be able to work it out in a few days as long as I asked questions and took notes. And that was the thing that made me realize that the other person who got hired with me probably lied on her resume and was completely out of her depth. She didn't take any notes and didn't ask any questions. And whenever I glanced at her I could see flashes of panic on her face. Well, lunchtime came and when we came back she said that another company had called her and offered her a permanent position and she couldn't work with us any longer. Both me and the person training us knew what was going on, but I'll give the other lady credit for finding a way out without losing face too badly. The takeaway here is, yes, fake it until you make it can and does work. But you gotta be able to fake it. You can't fake faking it. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a coworker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Edit, it was at a Publix. No, it was not Jameis Winston. This was a pizza place I worked at in college. New guy was started on Thursday. Fine worker, we showed him the ropes. He was on subs, which is the easiest job. The instructions are right in front of your face. Friday he no call no shows, it's Friday. The busiest night of the week. And he and I were the only kitchen workers that weren't also drivers. Monday a police officer shows up at the restaurant looking for him. No idea what happened as he wasn't there. Tuesday the owner informed me he was let go. Where to begin? One person didn't show up for their second day, citing culture shock, and then spent at least an hour each day complaining about everything to HR. They were gone inside of a month. Some other bloke refused to follow processes and called his manager an irrelevant woman in team meetings. Gone within a week. My favorite was technically a new coworker from my perspective only, as I'd only just become aware of their existence. They interpreted "we're going to retire that server from production" as "we're going to throw the hardware off of the roof into a skip," and proceeded to head down to the data center, power the thing off in the middle of the day, drive to his friend's office, plug the box in, and deploy a bunch of IVR scripts he'd derived from our proprietary scripts so they could run a bunch of psychic and sex hotlines. He was gone within 10 minutes of getting that server back. Couldn't pass the simple tests given at the end of new hire orientation. Yelled at test facilitator when she wouldn't just take the test for him. Sounds like an engineer my company hired. He was a PhD and really hit it off with the guys in management. Had some female colleagues working under his direction, and he was an absolute dick, demeaned their work, blamed them for things not working. Now my colleagues were excellent formulation chemists. He was brought on to lead a new formulation project and it wasn't working. He would tell them how to do it and it never worked. He kept blaming them for doing it wrong. My coworker got fed up and called him on his bullshit during a big meeting with a prepared presentation describing what they tried, how thoroughly they tried it, why what he proposed would never work, and an alternative solution. He was pissed, but the management guys were extremely knowledgeable and started asking him questions, and it was clear he couldn't answer. Turns out, his wife has a PhD too, and she pretty much did all of his degree work for him, both from a culture where women are not treated equally. He knew absolutely nothing. Not only that, but once everyone got to talking, it was clear just how massive an asshole this guy was. Sadly, my colleagues had to deal with this for months before everything was said and done. Spent my summers in college working as a laborer for a construction company. Anyway, we were doing a bunch of renovation in an active hospital, so noise and dust were a huge concern. We were a small crew and just starting renovations on an area with a super tight schedule, so the company hired a subcontractor for some of the work. Enter these two clowns who show up to do some demolition work. Foreman gives them the talk about how they may be used to doing things a certain way, but this is an active hospital, so he'd rather the work take longer than for them to make a huge mess or a lot of noise. An hour later, we apparently got multiple complaints about the noise and the mess, so the foreman calls me up and says to go over there and clean up now, and that he'd be by shortly to see what the hell was going on. These dudes had dust and broken wall everywhere. I could hear them halfway down the hall, just smashing away without a care in the world. The foreman shows up and we walk into the room to witness this dude standing on a pile of rubble swinging a sledgehammer over his head at a brick wall that he's removed the bottom from. Somehow the rest of this wall is still hanging from the ceiling, I have no idea how. Guy wasn't even wearing a hard hat, apparently oblivious that at any moment that wall might give way and crush him. The foreman lost his fucking mind on these guys. Kicked them out immediately, and got on the phone with their company and told them he didn't want to see these guys on site again. Lots of choice four-letter words were used, even threatened to fire the subcontractor entirely and get someone else to do the work. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing, and he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. Guy got hired, went through training and all that jazz. First day on the floor, he disappeared for 3 hours and then came back high as fuck on like meth or something. A manager found him in the bathroom aisle, staring at himself in the mirror. Said manager looked at the cameras after firing him. The guy was there staring at himself for at least 30+ minutes. Edit to clear up some questions. I worked at Home Depot. He was in the aisle where we sell bathroom countertops and medicine cabinets. We also have mirrors in this aisle and that's where he was. Not in the bathroom, ha. Corporate chain restaurant. New server, aged mid-30s. Third day he was working, we had to fire him mid-shift. Why? Dude went into the public restrooms, with other guests clearly in there using the urinal, and started doing lines of blow-off on the edge of the sink. I called a temp agency to get someone to help me count inventory. They sent a guy over with a cast on his arm. That was my first WTF, but I went with it because we were just counting parts. Then I came back from lunch and this dude was in my office chair zoned out and drooling on himself with a can of air duster in his lap. I kicked him awake and escorted him out of my warehouse. Never used that temp agency again. New director starts, at lunchtime goes to cafeteria, pays for the first salad plate, by weight, Then goes back twice for refills without paying. Cafeteria has cameras, cafeteria manager talks to the partner in charge. New director fired before the end of day. 5 days. My boss hired an executive chef, dude didn't even know how to make a quesadilla.